Next up, we have Steve Sherrill. What do you want to talk about? And the subject is model railroader or railroad modeler. Steve Sherrill, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tom. Well, tonight we're going to be talking about railroad modeler or model railroader. What am I? I don't know. I think I'm a model railroader. I've got a model railroad. It's modeled after a railroad, not a real railroad, but in my mind, it's got exact locations. Now, my definition of a model railroader is someone who has a model railroad, follows maybe a prototype, and just enjoys celebrating creating a model railroad. Now, a railroad modeler, in my opinion, is someone who doesn't have a railroad, but is a good modeler. Now, with that definition, where does that put Lionel guys or American Pliers? Are they just electric train operators, or are they model railroaders? If you have an opinion on this, I'd like to hear it. You know, maybe some clarification. Help me out. On my segments, I usually ask for volunteers to give me some of their input. So, in other words, if I ask Greg Cassidy, Greg, what do you think?
I don't know. I've never thought of much of a difference between that. However, I do know a lot of people who build a lot of railroad models and don't have a layout or plan to have a layout in the future, and they're building items for it. So I guess if you had to pin down a definition, they would be railroad modelers because they have not put together their model railroad, whether they plan to or not.
Well, I think you will agree. It doesn't really make any difference. We all have a common interest, and it's probably the interest that brings us together, whether we have a layout or not. You know, I think it's important to not really distinguish, but in our conversations, it comes up quite a bit when you'll say, well, Greg Cassidy is a great modeler, and somebody else say, well, but he doesn't have a model railroad. Like, I know that you have a model railroad, so I just use that you as an example. But you know, you've been in those conversations, and you know that it's a distinction between the two terms. And I don't know. You know, I like to think that everybody is a model railroader who does anything with model railroads.
Well, I know a number of people, a couple personally and others that I know of, who are incredible machinists, and their joy is scratch building locomotives out of metal. And they're definitely railroad modelers. In the sense that they're building a model of something that is railroad related. And sometimes I know one guy he just puts them on display. He doesn't have any intention of running them, but he likes to build them.
Yeah. So,
Steve?
Yes.
I personally classify myself as a railroad modeler.
Okay.
The reason why is I don't have a layout. I've started several and never gotten very far building them because I just like to build models. But the other thing is I really have no interest in running trains and some of the other things that having a layout and classified as model railroader. So model railroading. So I just consider myself a railroad modeler because I prefer to build models.
Now, Bill, I know that you're a great modeler. So whether you're a model railroader or a railroad modeler, you know, you're a great guy and a wonderful modeler. So, you know,
Thank you.
I certainly would not ever look down on you,
Mhm.
whether you have a model railroad or not.
Yeah.
Others may not appreciate you or know you like I do, and when they hear the term, just like we just talked, well, Bill Davis, great modeler, but doesn't have a model railroad. To you, enjoying the hobby is putting the buildings together, creating prototype replicas.
Exactly.
That's your part of the hobby.
Right.
And you do a fantastic job. So, anybody who's ever seen your models knows that they're just number one. But
Well, thanks.
if we ask somebody like, now I'm going to call on Eric Kennedy. Eric, I don't know you very well, or probably don't know you at all, actually. But if I ask you that same question that I just asked Greg, where are you as far as your opinion or any input that you want to give on this subject? Hope he's still on here. Greg Kennedy. Okay, Larry McDonald, where are you on this?
It's difficult to say. There's some people that have layouts. I'm thinking of Mr. Beatty. You probably have all seen his work. It's beautiful. It's caricature,
Yeah,
and it's very amusing. And but it's not a model of a railroad, a real railroad. And there's some people, you go the other end of the extreme, the rivet counters, as you call them. But I think sometimes it's a little unfair. But they try to duplicate the best they can in miniature a portion of a particular railroad, New York Central, Pennsylvania, whatever.
yeah.
And then there's those that just either you don't have the room or you don't want to have a model railroad. I know a couple of guys have built model railroads and don't run them. All that the railroad, they felt they had to have a railroad, a model railroad, to qualify as a model railroad modeler. But it's a platform for their beautiful models, and they build models. They take them to conventions, winning first place many times, and bring them home in some place rather than just put them on a shelf, install them in this layout. And so the layout is a static display, but it could run. It's wired and everything. But so where you really stand, I think it's where your enjoyment comes from.
Yeah. Well, one of the aspects that we are experiencing, I think, is the modular railroader. Like Phil, I'll call on you because I know that you're into the modules. Your layout will contain the existing modules that you have. You're just going to add on until but you also are a great modeler also. So I don't know where you are on this.
Yeah, Steve, I think it's, to my mind, there's actually a more basic question, which is, why did you choose to become involved with quote unquote model railroading? Right. And I make the argument that I think most people come into our hobby one of two ways. They're either a modeler who got tired of building static models and decided they wanted to see models move, and decided that models based on railroads was a great way to do modeling. So they're really at their core, they're model builders, and they chose railroads because it was a great thing to model. I think there's the other side, which is people who are generally infatuated with railroads and see building a model railroad as a way of extending that infatuation into their lives. I mean, what's interesting is that, if you do layout tours, how many of you have been to a layout that everybody would call a plywood Pacific?
Yeah.
But when you talk to the guy who built it, what you realized was he's interested in operations. He's incredibly interested in railroads. He is very infatuated with railroads. He's amazed by how they operated, the processes they operated in, and the models are not that important. Only the models that are necessary. And once you get past having engines, locomotives, and track, the industries can just be cardboard boxes for that matter, because from the standpoint of doing an operating session, it's almost irrelevant. So I think that the question that's a really interesting question is, and you actually got onto, is why do you build a layout? Is the layout there to watch trains run? Is it the layout there to operate? Or is the layout there primarily a place to show your models and demonstrate, you have your models be, in that environment? But in the end, I kind of think it's all model railroading. It's just a little bit different aspects within it. And I think it's a bit pejorative to say that someone who doesn't have a layout is not a model railroader. They may be just as infatuated. I think the really interesting question would be to ask is, when was the last time you went on a rail fan trip? I mean, that's another interesting question, right? Which is, if you are a model railroader and it's about railroads, do you go out and study the railroads? Do you go out and do that? Or, if you look at it from things, if I built a layout and it's totally imaginary, is that the same as building something that's based on the prototype, whether it's a layout or not? So in the end, I think it's a bit of a challenge to even describe that. I think we all get here from different places, and it's a great hobby to enjoy regardless of how you got here.
There's no question. I mean, you have clubs that have members that don't have trains at all. They just want to be a member of a club in the group, and their experiences with the operation, as you say, is their fulfillment. Or they're into the electronics that is very popular now. All that is that their inspiration, and they're not really interested in anything than hooking up the wires, and making it go. And it takes into a lot of facets to make a model railroad anyway. We're carpenters, we're electricians, we're model builders, we're a lot of things to make a decent model railroad, or a model for that matter. I think you can copy a structure as it is and make a prototype, or you can make it the way you want it to be, the way you think it should be. And you're kit bashing, or you're creating what you want to create in your mind. That's what I enjoy about it, is the bashing of the structures, locomotives, cars, things like that. Maybe things that aren't, prototypical at all. But it's a great hobby.
Well, that's what I was going to say to you as well, Steve, is that, there's subgroups within model railroading. I've noticed there's prototypical model railroaders, there's freelance model railroaders, there's operational model railroaders. And then also, to Phil's point, I might not be able to travel, or might not travel and literally be there to film and photograph model railroads. But, we live in the age where I have Google Earth on my computer and YouTube videos of people on trains filming every aspect of the railroad, to where I've done extensive research on, some of the railroads that I plan to model. And that's one thing that is just a part of the culture today. And just one aspect and one thing we have that wasn't always available.
Yeah. Well, Doc, you're a relatively new modeler, and you're an N scale, but yet the work that we've seen is really, I think, magnificent. What you've done with paper construction to create what you want to show when you build your final layout. So I think you're really on the right track.
Well, thank you. Like I said, I am, like you said, I am very new. But I just try to mimic what I see. I see something that I like. I want to make it as realistic as possible and add as much to the landscape and the surrounding area as possible. Therefore, I am an N scale. But I don't believe myself to be a prototypical model railroader by any means, because I just don't, there's just no way I can pull off an exact prototype. I don't believe, I mean, perhaps I could, but I believe that I got into the hobby because, like Phil said, I'm a modeler.
Mhm.
I like to model. I like to model areas. I like to model cities, buildings, cars. If I could have an airplane flying through it, if there was some type of way they figured out to do that, I would do it.
Yeah.
But because model railroads and model railroad manufacturers give you that right of locomotion in your diorama, that tends to be, first of all, not only what a modeler would jump to initially, unless they have a very good understanding of electronics and servos and motors and all that, but also because the majority of the manufacturers are kind of centered around the model railroading industry. So I've noticed that even though I was a modeler, I'm becoming a model railroader just because I'm saturated in it every day.
Well, I think what you're going to be modeling is really different. I'm anxious to see your layout as it progresses. You take somebody like Tom, who has both sides covered, a nice model railroad and a great modeler, and you have a true definition of a model railroader that has both sides covered. I think that Tom's just doing a great job on what he does, and so I give him credit. I give everybody credit who is on the new tracks. We have a lot of accomplished modelers here. I don't know who has a railroad and who doesn't. We really don't communicate that too well. It would be nice to know who has a layout, who doesn't. If you had a layout, are you downsizing because you moved or something like that? We're all here kind of just to share our model railroad experience. So, we're going to be doing that from now on as long as the show is on. So if there's anyone else that wants to add something, we'll got plenty of time.
Steve,
Yes.
I think it was you or somebody mentioned Gary Beatty, who models
Another he is another guy, and they have a whole group of them out there they model a completely different world than we think about. They're great modelers in what they do. They're creators.
What I wanted to say is, I mean, he's an artist.
Oh,
yeah,
and
and
there's those creators,
and prototypical artists like Phil does.
Oh.
So there's two extremes. But they're both artists in their own right. I once asked a artist at an art fair who did abstract art. I said, "Can you do portraits?" He said, "Yes." And he says, "I can do very detailed portraits." And I said, "How long does it take you to do a portrait?" He says, "Oh, I can do a near photograph quality portrait in 3 to 4 hours." And I said, "Well, how long does it take you to do one of those abstract paintings? You look at them and you think it's just paint on canvas and any idiot can do it." And he says, "Well, actually, it takes me 3 or 4 days, sometimes 3 or 4 weeks just to think about what I'm going to do. And when I finally put the paint to canvas, that's another 3 or 4 weeks." So I'm trying to use the analogy with Gary Beatty that, some of the people that, like a Proto 48 guy or somebody that, as we call a rivet counter, just doesn't understand or appreciate that side of the hobby. And but he's a true artist and a true modeler, and it's a fantasy world, and there's room for that, just as there's room for the Proto 48 or the quote unquote rivet counters. It's what's unique about the hobby.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100% with that. One of the the future episodes we're going to put on here, the segment is going to be about building older kits out of plastic. And that's going to be coming up very soon. I think we ought to do that after the my build, and do that the week after. Okay, Tom.
Yeah.
And I'm going to contact some of the people, and we're going to show. If you show one of my slides. This is what
I don't have it ready. I don't have it ready.
You don't have it ready? Okay.
Sorry. But if everybody remembers that Lionel, it was only a couple weeks ago, I bought a Lionel switch tower for $12 at a show. I turned it into a scale model and for nothing, basically under $20. Greg Cassidy on his I saw somewhere on the Facebook page where I think he took a Pola kit,
yeah,
Greg, and turned it into a quote scale model.
I've done 3 of them now, a Pola, an AHM, and I just finished up Concord, which was the old Revell kit.
So what Steve's talking about is reaching out to all of you and our YouTubers, and it's not a my build. It's not competing with the my build. It's really show us a picture of taking one of these classic plastic kits. It can be an old one, probably will be an old one, but what did you do to it to make it your own? You kit bashed it. You, in my case, you turned it from a toy to something that looks like a laser kit model. Greg's got 3 of them in that vein. It covers a lot of things. One, every time I go to a train show, a major train show like the Great Train Show, there are tables full of these. I mean, they're mostly HO, but there's some O scale and certainly N scale, probably second in line. Tables of these pre-built kits. They're typically, sometimes they're not even painted, but they're cheap, $2, $5. And you can buy one of these and turn it into a really outstanding model. We want to see if you did that on your layout and what that looks like. Is that right, Steve? You want to?
That's exactly what we want to do. Yes.
We think it would be interesting to get participation from people that have not participated in the show, that either have these on their shelf or have it on their layout. Was it a kit that you had as a child or as an early model railroader and you pulled it off the layout, updated it, scratched, kit bashed it? It just would be fascinating to see, because this would also appeal to the youth that may not have the discretionary spending that some of us might have. A good way to get into the hobby and get into it, realistically. So,
yeah, there are a lot of people who have done really fantastic jobs with these models, and they've just used some of the old time kit bashing techniques. Things that we have progressed beyond with the kits that we're doing today that were quite effective.
I think Martin is probably a master at taking these old kits and producing pretty nice models out of them.
yeah, I would say that's probably the.
Well, yeah, but that's not the kit we're talking about, Bill.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
Oh, well, Martin, he's in another league.
Exactly.
He could literally take a block of wood.
Turn it into a
Yeah.
master model builder that he is.
Yeah.
Well,